Close your eyes and settle into comfort, for tonight we embark on a journey through the most beautifully complex family tree ever imagined. Let your breathing slow and deepen as we explore why Norse mythology's genealogies have confounded scholars, delighted storytellers, and inspired dreamers for over 1,000 years. Why Norse mythology's family tree is infamously complex. Unlike the neat generational lines of Greek mythology, where Zeus sits atop Mount Olympus with his clearly defined children and grandchildren, or the orderly succession of Egyptian pharaoh gods passing divine authority through predictable bloodlines, Norse mythology presents us with something far more chaotic and wonderful. Here, in the mists of Scandinavian imagination, gods marry giants, shapeshifters become mothers to 8-legged horses, and wolves grow large enough to swallow the sun itself. The core confusion stems from the fundamental Norse understanding that all beings, gods, giants, elves, and dwarves, are interconnected in ways that defy simple categorization. Where other mythologies maintain clear boundaries between divine and monstrous, heroic and villainous, Norse stories revel in the gray areas, the impossible relationships, the family ties that bind enemies together in bonds stronger than hate. Picture, if you will, a family reunion where your uncle is also your horse, your brother-in-law is destined to kill you at the end of the world, and your grandmother might be the earth itself. This is the delightful madness we're about to explore together, letting each impossible connection lull you deeper into peaceful sleep. Tonight, we unravel these relationships through the ancient art of soothing storytelling, framing our exploration as a sleep story where calming tones and rhythmic pacing guide you through the labyrinth of Norse kinship. Each name we speak, Odin, Frigg, Thor, Loki, Freya, carries with it the weight of countless relationships, each connection branching into new complications like frost patterns spreading across a winter window. Let the gentle rhythm of these ancient names wash over you. Balder the beautiful, Hr the blind, Heimdall the watchman, Tyr the one-handed, each carrying their own thread in the great tapestry we're about to weave together. Our journey draws primarily from two great wellsprings of Norse wisdom, the Poetic Edda, that collection of anonymous verses passed down through generations of skalds and storytellers, and the Prose Edda of Snorri Sturluson, the Icelandic historian who in the 13th century tried to make sense of these very same family complications we explore tonight. But even these sources disagree with each other, creating regional variations and contradictions that only add to our confusion. Where the Poetic Edda might call someone a son, the Prose Edda names them a brother. Where one kenning suggests a marriage, another implies mere friendship. These contradictions are not flaws to be corrected, but features to be celebrated, reminders that mythology grows and changes like a living tree, each telling adding new branches to the ever-expanding canopy of story. Some say Loki's mother was Laufey, others call her Nal. Some claim Odin had one eye from birth, others tell of his sacrifice at Mimir's well. Tonight, we embrace all versions, letting them flow together like tributaries joining a great river, carrying us toward the peaceful shores of sleep. In the beginning was Ginnungagap, the great void, the yawning emptiness that existed before worlds, before gods, before the very concept of family itself. But even in this nothingness, the seeds of the most complex relationships were already stirring, waiting to burst forth in ways that would define the structure of reality itself. From the meeting of ice and fire, from the collision of Niflheim's frozen mists and Muspelheim's scorching flames, emerged the first being, Ymir, the ancestor giant whose very existence would establish the pattern of impossible Norse relationships. Picture Ymir now, massive beyond human comprehension, sleeping in the cosmic void while the first drops of melting ice nourish his primordial dreams. But Ymir's method of reproduction sets the tone for everything that follows. This first being needed no partner, no courtship, no union with another. Instead, from the sweat of his left armpit emerged the first male and female giants, while his feet mated with each other to produce even more of his kind. Here, In the very first moment of Norse creation, we encounter the impossibility that will define everything, single beings giving birth to entire races, body parts becoming lovers, sweat transforming into conscious life. Feel your muscles relaxing as you contemplate this primal scene. Ymir's massive form stirring in cosmic sleep, his body becoming the source of all giant kind through the simple act of perspiration. His dreams perhaps filled with visions of the countless descendants who would spring from his sleeping form, giants who would become lovers to gods, mothers to heroes, enemies and allies in the great cosmic drama about to unfold. The giants born from Ymir carried within them both his creative power and his chaotic nature. They would spread across the forming cosmos, establishing themselves in Jotunheim, the giant realm, but never remaining isolated there. From the very beginning, giants and gods would be intertwined, their bloodlines crossing and recrossing until the distinction between divine and giant became meaningless, a beautiful confusion that we carry with us into sleep. But Ymir was not alone in that primordial void. The cosmic forces that created him also brought forth Audhumla, the primeval cow whose warm tongue would literally lick the first god into existence. Picture this magnificent creature, sustaining herself on blocks of salty ice while her 4 rivers of milk nourished the growing giant Ymir. Here already we see the interdependence that will characterize all Norse relationships, god and giant, creator and created, nourisher and nourished, all bound together in cycles of mutual dependence. For 3 days, Audhumla licked the ice blocks, her warm tongue gradually revealing hair on the first day, a head on the second, and on the 3rd day, the complete form of Buri, the first god, emerging from his icy prison like a sculpture coming to life under the artist's patient hand. Buri, whose name means born or son, represents the divine principle emerging from chaos, order arising from the primordial void. But even Buri's family line immediately becomes complex. He fathers Bor, who will marry Bestla, and here we encounter our first god-giant union, as Bestla is daughter to the giant Bolthorn. This marriage between Bor and Bestla produces 3 sons who will reshape the cosmos, Odin the All-Father, Vili whose name means will, and Ve whose name means sacred enclosure. Already, in the 2nd generation of existence, divine and giant bloodlines intertwine inextricably. Let your breathing slow as you picture these 3 brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve, standing at the threshold of creation, their mixed heritage giving them both the wisdom of gods and the raw power of giants. They are about to commit the first great familial violence, but also the first great act of cosmic creation. The murder of Ymir by his great-grandsons establishes the pattern that will run through all of Norse mythology, family violence that creates rather than destroys, endings that become beginnings, death that births new life. Odin, Vili, and Ve, driven by visions of a cosmos more ordered than Ymir's chaotic reproduction, slay their ancestor and use his body to construct the very foundations of reality. From Ymir's flesh they fashion Midgard, the middle world where humans will dwell. His blood becomes the seas and lakes, his bones the mountains and hills, his skull the dome of heaven itself. Even his hair finds purpose, becoming the trees and forests, while his brains, scattered into the sky, become the clouds. His eyelashes form the protective wall around Midgard, and from his eyebrows the gods create barriers between the worlds. But perhaps most tellingly, the giants, Ymir's direct descendants, survive this cosmic murder, fleeing across the forming worlds to establish their own realms and kingdoms. They do not forget their ancestors' death, but neither do they exist in simple opposition to the gods. Instead, they become lovers, wives, husbands, allies, and enemies in endless, shifting combinations. The giants remember Ymir's death but choose relationship over revenge, complexity over simple justice. Feel this foundational paradox settling into your consciousness like snow on quiet branches, violence that creates beauty, murder that enables life, family conflict that establishes the very structure of reality. The Norse cosmos begins with an impossible act of creative destruction, setting the stage for all the impossible relationships that will follow. As you drift deeper into relaxation, picture the newly formed world spinning in the void where Ymir once slept, each realm connected to all others by the branches and roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree that grows from the giant's transformed body, reaching into every corner of existence with its web of connection and interdependence. Now we enter the golden halls of Asgard, where Odin Allfather has established his court and begun the process of filling it with the most confusingly related family in all mythology. Here, beneath the high roof of Gladsheim, surrounded by his wolves Jerry and Freki, attended by his ravens Hugin and Munin, Odin sits upon his throne Hlidskjalf and surveys the tangled web of relationships he has created through his wanderings across the 9 worlds. Let your mind settle like morning mist as we explore Odin's immediate family, beginning with his own mixed heritage. Born to Bor the god and Bestla the giantess, Odin carries within himself the eternal tension between order and chaos, wisdom and wildness, divine purpose and giant passion. His very existence proves that the most powerful beings arise not from pure bloodlines but from the creative tension between opposites. Odin's brothers, Vili and Ve, remain shadowy figures in most tales, but their importance cannot be understated. Together, the 3 brothers not only slayed Ymir but also created the first humans, Ask and Embla, from ash and elm trees found on the seashore. Odin gave them breath and life, Vili gave them consciousness and movement, and Ve gave them speech and the ability to see and hear. Thus humanity itself springs from divine brotherhood, from the cooperation of siblings who share both god and giant heritage. But it is Odin's romantic entanglements that truly complicate our family tree, creating a web of relationships that spans all 9 worlds. Picture the Allfather in his wanderer's guise, wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his missing eye, long cloak billowing in the cosmic winds, his spear Gungnir gleaming as he walks the roads between worlds, gathering not just wisdom but wives and children with each journey. His primary wife, Frigg, sits beside him in golden Asgard as queen of the gods. Daughter of Fjorgyn and sister to Jr, who is also, confusingly, sometimes identified as the same person as Fjorgyn, Frigg embodies the queenly virtues of foresight, domestic wisdom, and maternal protection. She knows all fates but speaks of them to none, carrying her knowledge like a secret burden that weighs heavy on her divine heart. With Odin, she mothers Balder the Beautiful, the god so beloved that all things in creation swore oaths not to harm him, all things, that is, except for one small mistletoe plant that would prove his undoing. But Odin's hunger for wisdom and his wanderer's nature led him to many other unions across the 9 worlds. With Jr, who is both Frigg's sister and the personification of Earth herself, he fathered Thor, the red-bearded thunder god whose hammer Mjolnir would become the most famous weapon in all the 9 worlds. This union between Skyfather and Earth Mother produced a son who embodies the meeting of celestial power and earthly strength, divine authority and natural force. The relationship between Odin and Rind represents perhaps his most troubling romantic pursuit. The Prose Edda tells us that Rind was a mortal princess whom Odin pursued relentlessly, even disguising himself as various people to gain access to her. Their union, whether willing or forced, produced Vali, born specifically to avenge Baldr's death by killing Hr. Here we see Odin as both loving father grieving his son's murder and calculating king manipulating fate itself to ensure justice is served. With Gunnlod, the giant maiden who guarded the mead of poetry in the heart of a mountain, Odin spent 3 nights in exchange for 3 draughts of the precious mead. But those 3 nights produced more than just Odin's acquisition of divine poetry, they also resulted in the birth of Bragi, god of eloquence and verse, whose very existence embodies the truth that the greatest art arises from the union of divine wisdom and giant passion. Let these names flow through your consciousness like a gentle river. Frigg, Jr., Rindr, Gunlod, each one representing not just a lover but a different aspect of Odin's complex nature, each relationship adding new branches to our ever-growing family tree. Feel your breathing deepen as you contemplate the All-Father's endless quest for wisdom, love, and children, his willingness to cross all boundaries, between worlds, between species, between friend and enemy, in service of his cosmic purposes. Thor-Inson, born of Odin and Jr., represents perhaps the most straightforward branch of our family tree, but even his seemingly simple relationships carry their own beautiful complications. Picture the thunder god in his hall Bilskirner, which boasts 540 rooms and stands as the largest building in all of Asgard. His red beard crackling with electrical energy, his hammer Mjolnir never far from his grasp, his belt Meginger doubling his already incredible strength, Thor embodies divine power at its most direct and uncomplicated. His marriage to Sif creates one of the more stable relationships in Norse mythology, though even here we find interesting complications. Sif, whose golden hair was famously shorn by Loki in a moment of mischievous malice, represents the harvest goddess, her restored locks symbolizing the grain that feeds humanity. When Loki cut her hair, he created a family crisis that could only be resolved by his commissioning the dark elves to create new hair from spun gold, hair that was somehow even more beautiful than her original locks. But Sif brought to her marriage with Thor a son from a previous relationship, Ullr, whose father remains unnamed in the surviving sources. This makes Thor simultaneously a father and a stepfather, a relationship dynamic that adds another layer of complexity to the divine household. Ullr himself grows into a god of skiing and archery, so skilled with bow and skis that he becomes legendary even among the Aesir, yet his parentage remains one of mythology's enduring mysteries. Thor and Sif's own children continue the family's association with strength and protection. Their daughter Thrud, whose name means strength, inherits her father's powerful nature, while their sons Mi and Magni represent courage and strength, respectively. The Prose Edda tells us that these two sons will survive Ragnarok and inherit their father's hammer Mjolnir, carrying Thor's protective power into the post-apocalyptic world. But Thor's romantic life, like his father's, extends beyond his marriage. With the giantess Jarnsaxa, whose name means iron knife, Thor fathers another son named Magni, creating the confusing situation where Thor has two sons with the same name from different mothers. This second Magni also inherits tremendous strength, and some sources suggest he is the same Magni destined to survive Ragnarok, while others maintain they are separate individuals sharing a name. Feel your muscles relaxing as you picture Thor's household, the thunder god surrounded by his golden-haired wife, his mysteriously parented stepson, his strength-gifted children, and the echo of relationships that extend into the giant realm. Even the most straightforward of the gods carries complications that remind us how thoroughly interconnected the Norse cosmos truly is. The story of Baldur and Hr represents one of the most tragic and beautiful branches of our family tree, a tale of brothers whose opposite natures doom them to a conflict that will help precipitate the end of the world itself. Let your breathing slow as we explore this story of light and shadow, sight and blindness, beloved and overlooked, destined and deceived. Baldur the Beautiful, son of Odin and Frigg, shines as the most beloved of all the gods. His beauty is so perfect that light emanates from his presence, his wisdom so pure that all who hear him speak are convinced by his words, his nature so gentle and good that nothing in all the 9 worlds wishes him harm. When Baldur begins to dream of his own death, his mother Frigg travels throughout creation, extracting oaths from every living thing, every element, every force of nature, all swearing never to harm her precious son. But Frigg's maternal diligence overlooks one small thing, the mistletoe, which seemed too young and innocent to pose any threat to the mighty gods. This oversight will prove fatal, but not through any malice of the mistletoe itself, but through the manipulations of Loki and the tragic circumstances of Baldur's brother. Hr the Blind, also son of Odin and Frigg, lives in his brother's shadow in more ways than one. Where Baldr is beautiful, Hr is unremarkable. Where Baldr is beloved, Hr is often forgotten. Where Baldr sees all, Hr sees nothing. Yet the brothers love each other deeply, their opposite natures creating a complementary bond that makes each more complete. When the gods discover that Baldr cannot be harmed by any weapon or force in creation, they make a game of throwing things at him, delighting in how spears bounce off him harmlessly, how stones refuse to strike him, how fire will not burn him. But Hr cannot participate in this game, his blindness prevents him from aiming, and his isolation from the joyful activity pains him deeply. Loki, ever the manipulator of family dynamics, approaches Hr with false sympathy and genuine malice. He fashions a dart from mistletoe, the one substance that never swore an oath to spare Baldr, and guides Hr's hand in throwing it. The blind brother becomes the weapon of his brother's destruction, his love manipulated into murder, his greatest desire to participate in his family's joy becoming the instrument of their greatest tragedy. When Baldr falls, pierced by the mistletoe dart, the light goes out of the world. Frigg's maternal grief shakes the foundations of Asgard, while Hr's horror at his unwitting fratricide drives him nearly mad with remorse. The other gods' shock and rage focus on both Loki the manipulator and Hr the unwitting murderer, creating fractures in the divine family that will never fully heal. But even this tragedy carries the seeds of future complexity. Odin, driven by grief and the need for justice, pursues and impregnates Rindr specifically to father Vali, a son born with the sole purpose of avenging Baldr by killing Hr. When Vali is only 1 day old, he fulfills his destiny, becoming both avenger and fratricide, justice bringer and family destroyer. Let this tragic beauty settle into your peaceful mind, the blind brother's love becoming murder, the mother's protection becoming vulnerability, the father's justice becoming another source of family pain. In Norse mythology, even the most devastating tragedies carry within them the promise of renewal. The Prose Edda tells us that after Ragnarok, both Baldr and Hr will return from the dead, their fraternal conflict resolved in the new world, their brotherly love restored by the cosmic reset that follows the world's ending. Feel your breath growing slower and deeper as you contemplate this promise of reconciliation, this assurance that even the most painful family divisions can be healed by time and transformation, that endings always carry within them the seeds of new beginnings. No figure in all of Norse mythology creates more family complications than Loki Lysmith, the silver-tongued shapeshifter whose very existence blurs every line we attempt to draw. Neither fully god nor entirely giant, neither wholly good nor completely evil, Loki stands at the center of our family tree like a knot that cannot be untangled, a paradox that defies all attempts at simple categorization. Let your mind drift as we explore Loki's mysterious beginnings, for even his parentage carries contradictions that scholars have debated for centuries. Most sources name his father as Farbodi, whose name means cruel striker, and who belongs to the giant race. His mother appears under two names, Laufey, meaning leafy island, and Nal, meaning needle, and some sources suggest these are two names for the same being, while others propose they represent different aspects of Loki's maternal heritage. What makes Loki's origins even more intriguing is that he is sometimes called Loki Laufeyjarson, son of Laufey, using his mother's name rather than his father's, which suggests either that Laufey held higher status than Farbodi, or that there's some deeper mystery about his paternal parentage that the surviving sources don't fully reveal. But regardless of the confusion surrounding his birth parents, Loki's most important family relationship comes through blood brotherhood with Odin himself. The Lokasena tells us that Loki and Odin swore oaths of brotherhood so binding that Odin declared he would never drink ale unless it was also offered to Loki. This blood brotherhood grants Loki entry into Asgard not as a god by birth, but as a god by adoption, making him simultaneously insider and outsider, family member and eternal stranger. Picture young Loki arriving in Asgard, his shape-shifting nature already evident, his quick wit and quicker tongue earning him both admirers and enemies among the Aesir. His blood brotherhood with Odin grants him protection and status, but it also binds him to the divine family in ways that will eventually become chains, his loyalty tested by conflicts between his giant heritage and his adopted divine identity. The relationship between Odin and Loki represents one of the most complex dynamics in all mythology, part friendship, part necessity, part mutual fascination and mutual dependence. Odin needs Loki's cunning and shape-shifting abilities to solve problems that pure divine power cannot address. Loki needs Odin's protection and the legitimacy that comes with membership in the Aesir. Each depends on the other in ways they perhaps don't fully understand, creating a bond that survives betrayal, punishment, and even the end of the world itself. With the giantess Angrboda, whose name means anguish-bringer or grief-bringer, Loki fathers 3 children who will become the greatest threats to the cosmic order the gods have established. Yet even as we call them monsters, we must remember that they are also family, beloved children, protective siblings, beings whose monstrous nature stems not from inherent evil but from the fear and prejudice they encounter from the gods who helped raise them. Feel your heartbeat slow as we meet these 3 extraordinary beings, each representing a different aspect of inevitable destruction, each carrying within them both their parents' love and their own tragic destiny. Hel, the eldest, embodies the complexity of life and death intertwined. Her body is half living flesh and half decaying corpse, beautiful and terrible simultaneously, representing the truth that death is not the opposite of life but its inevitable partner. When the gods see her dual nature, they exile her to the realm of the dead, where she becomes its ruler, governing those who die of sickness or old age rather than in battle. Yet Hel is not cruel, she is dutiful, fair, and protective of those in her care. When Baldur dies, it is Hel who sets the conditions for his possible return, showing mercy even as she maintains the cosmic order. Jormungandr, the world serpent, grows so large that the gods fear he will destroy the earth itself, so they cast him into the sea surrounding Midgard. There he grows until he encircles the entire world, grasping his own tail in his mouth, becoming a living symbol of eternity and cosmic cycles. Thor and Jormungandr are destined to kill each other at Ragnarok, yet there's something almost beautiful about their enmity, the thunder god and the world serpent, sky and sea, representing opposing forces that define each other through their eternal conflict. Fenrir, the wolf, perhaps carries the most tragic story of all. Raised in Asgard among the gods, only Tyr is brave enough to feed him as he grows impossibly large and strong. The gods' fear of Fenrir creates the very problem they seek to prevent. By attempting to bind him, they turn a loyal wolf into an enemy. The binding of Fenrir requires deception and betrayal, costing Tyr his hand and creating the enmity that will lead Fenrir to swallow Odin at Ragnarok. Here we see how fear and prejudice create the very monsters they claim to prevent, how family rejection breeds the vengeance it supposedly forestalls. Let these 3 figures settle into your peaceful mind: Hel the dutiful ruler, Jormungandr the cosmic serpent, Fenrir the betrayed wolf. Each one a child, each one a monster, each one a victim of divine fear and an agent of inevitable justice. With his wife Sigyn, the faithful goddess who remains loyal to him even after his punishment, Loki has 2 more children, Narfi and Vali. But even these seemingly normal offspring become victims of the gods' justice, transformed and killed to provide the bonds that will hold Loki prisoner until Ragnarok. The gods turn one son into a wolf to kill the other, then use the dead son's entrails to bind the father, a punishment so cruel that even the cosmic order itself seems to rebel against it, causing the venom that drips on Loki's face to shake the earth with his convulsions. Perhaps no story better illustrates the impossibility of Norse family relationships than the tale of Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, whom Loki didn't father but mothered. Picture the scene: the gods have commissioned a giant builder to construct a wall around Asgard, agreeing to pay him with the sun, moon, and the goddess Freya if he completes the work in a single winter. When it becomes clear that the giant's magnificent stallion Svalfari will enable him to finish on time, the gods panic. Loki, master of solutions and complications alike, transforms himself into a beautiful mare and leads Svalfari away from the construction site, spending months in this form to ensure the giant cannot complete his work. But this deception has an unexpected consequence. Loki becomes pregnant and gives birth to Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse who will become Odin's most valued steed. This story creates one of the most wonderfully impossible family relationships in all mythology. Loki becomes both grandmother and mother to Odin's horse. Odin rides his blood brother's child across the 9 worlds. The same being who will eventually orchestrate Baldr's death also provides the All-Father with his primary means of transportation between the realms. Feel your breathing deepen as you contemplate this beautiful paradox: the shapeshifter whose very nature defies category, the trickster whose tricks create the tools the gods depend upon, the outsider whose contributions become essential to the cosmic order he is destined to help destroy. Sleipnir himself represents the ultimate hybrid, part horse, part divine steed, born of magic and deception yet serving faithfully as mount to the king of gods. His 8 legs carry Odin between the worlds of the living and the dead, making him perhaps the most traveled being in all of Norse mythology, a bridge between realms like his shape-shifting parent. The relationship between Loki and Sleipnir adds another impossible layer to our family tree. Does Loki feel maternal affection for this horse son? Does Odin acknowledge his steed's complex parentage? Does Sleipnir understand his own impossible origins? These questions remain beautifully unanswered, leaving us to drift into sleep wondering about the emotions that might exist between a shape-shifting trickster mother and the divine horse who carries the king of gods across the cosmos. Let Loki's story settle into your dreams: the blood brother who becomes enemy, the mother who fathers, the outsider who proves essential, the agent of chaos whose chaos enables order itself. In Loki we find all the contradictions that make Norse mythology so wonderfully impossible to categorize, so beautifully resistant to simple understanding. Across the cosmic void from Asgard lies another divine realm, home to the Vanir gods who represent a completely separate branch of our mythological family tree. Yet through war, marriage, and mutual adoption, these fertility deities become so thoroughly integrated with the Aesir that separating them becomes as difficult as untangling roots beneath the earth. Let your mind drift back to the early days of divine history, when 2 separate families of gods, the Aesir of Asgard and the Vanir of Vanaheim, existed in their own realms with their own customs and powers. The Aesir, led by Odin, represented war, wisdom, and cosmic order. The Vanir, led by Njrr and his twin children, embodied fertility, prosperity, and the life-giving forces of earth and sea. The war between these divine families began, as many family conflicts do, with a misunderstanding that escalated beyond all proportion. A Vanir goddess named Gulvig came to Asgard practicing seer magic, the feminine art of prophecy and fertility. The Aesir, suspicious of her power and perhaps threatened by her different approach to divinity, killed her 3 times, yet each time she was reborn, more powerful than before. This treatment of their messenger sparked the first divine war, as the Vanir attacked Asgard to avenge Gulvig's deaths. The conflict raged across the cosmos, neither side able to achieve decisive victory over the other. The Aesir possessed superior weapons and battle tactics, but the Vanir commanded the very forces of fertility and abundance upon which all life depended. Picture the cosmic landscape during this divine war, Odin hurling his spear Gungnir while Njrr commands the seas themselves to rise in response. Walls crumbling under divine assault while the earth itself withholds its bounty from the battling gods. A conflict that threatens not just the warring deities but the very foundation of existence itself. But wisdom prevailed over warfare, as both sides recognized that their conflict threatened to destroy everything they sought to protect. The solution they devised would become one of the most successful family integrations in all mythology, a complete hostage exchange that transformed enemies into relatives, separate pantheons into a single divine family. The Vanir sent Njrr and his twin children Freyr and Freya to live permanently in Asgard, while the Aesir sent Honor and Mimir to dwell in Vanaheim. But this exchange proved unequal in the most beautiful way possible. The Vanir hostages became so beloved in Asgard that they chose to stay permanently, while the integration of fertility magic with war magic created new possibilities that neither pantheon could have achieved alone. Njrr of Noden, lord of the sea winds and the bounty of ocean and shore, brings with him to Asgard a different understanding of divine power. Where Odin rules through knowledge and Thor through strength, Njrr governs through abundance and the generous gifts of sea and sky. His halls echo with the cries of seabirds, his wealth comes from the ships that sail under his protection, his power flows as naturally as tides across the cosmic shoreline. His marriage to Skadi creates one of the most beautifully doomed relationships in Norse mythology, a love story that teaches us about the inevitability of incompatibility between even the most well-intentioned partners. Skadi, daughter of the giant Jotzi, comes to Asgard demanding compensation for her father's death at the gods' hands. As part of the settlement, she is allowed to choose a husband from among the gods, but she may only see their feet when making her selection. Hoping to choose Balder for his beauty, Skadi instead selects the feet she thinks most attractive, which belong to Njrr. Their wedding represents a union between sea and mountain, abundance and austerity, the warm shores of plenty and the cold peaks of endurance. For a time, their love transcends these differences, but ultimately their natures prove incompatible. Their marriage contract attempts to bridge their differences through compromise: 9 nights in Skadi's mountain halls of Rimheim, 9 nights in Njrr's seaside palace of Noden. But Njrr cannot sleep in the mountains for the howling of wolves, while Skadi finds no rest by the sea for the crying of gulls and the crash of waves against the shore. Feel your own breathing slow as you imagine this divine couple, each beautiful in their own element, each suffering when removed from their natural home. Njrr speaks of his discomfort: "Hateful to me are the mountains, not long was I there, only 9 nights. The howling of wolves seemed ugly to me compared to the song of swans." Skadi responds with equal honesty: "I could not sleep on the seabeds for the clamor of birds. The gull wakes me when it comes from the ocean each morning." Their eventual separation carries no bitterness, only the sad recognition that love alone cannot overcome fundamental incompatibility. Yet their brief union produces something beautiful, not children of their own bodies, but the adoption and integration of divine wisdom that enriches both sea and mountain realms. The twin children of Njrr represent perhaps the most beloved deities in the entire Norse pantheon, their names literally meaning Lord and Lady, their worship extending far beyond the halls of gods to encompass every farmer hoping for good harvests, every lover seeking fulfillment, every ruler desiring prosperity for their people. Freyr, the lord of fertility and prosperity, governs the life-giving forces of sun and rain, seed and harvest. His hall Alfheim, realm of the light elves, receives sunlight before any other place in the cosmos, making him literally the bringer of dawn to the 9 worlds. His ship Splanir, crafted by the dwarfs, can sail through air as easily as water and can be folded up like cloth when not needed. His golden boar Gullinbursti runs through air and water faster than any horse, its bristles glowing with inner light that illuminates even the darkest realms. But Freyr's story becomes complicated when he falls desperately in love with the giant maiden Gerd, daughter of Ymir. Sitting on Odin's throne Hlidskjalf without permission, Freyr gazes across the 9 worlds and sees Gerd's beauty shining like sunlight on water. Her arms, as she raises them to open the door of her father's hall, illuminate both sky and sea with their radiance, filling Freyr with such longing that he falls into lovesickness so severe he cannot eat or speak. Unable to woo Gerd himself, for how can a fertility god enter the realm of frost giants and maintain his essential nature? Freyr sends his faithful servant Skirnir on the perilous journey to Jotunheim. Skirnir's mission requires not just Freyr's horse and sword, but a complex negotiation involving gifts, threats, and magical compulsion before Gerd finally agrees to meet Freyr at the forest Bari after 9 nights have passed. Their eventual union produces Fjalnir, who becomes the first king of Sweden, establishing a divine bloodline that will connect the Vanir gods to mortal rulers for generations. Yet Freyr's sacrifice of his magical sword to win Gerd's love will have cosmic consequences. At Ragnarok, the weaponless fertility god will fall to Surtur's flaming sword, his death marking the moment when the forces of destruction overwhelm the powers of life and growth. Freya, the Lady of Love and Fertility, practices seer magic with such skill that she teaches it even to Odin himself. Her Hall-Sesrumner receives half of those who die in battle, while the other half go to Odin's Valhalla, making her both a war goddess and a love goddess, both chooser of the slain and mistress of life's pleasures. Her marriage to Ar creates one of mythology's most poignant mysteries. Ar, whose name means frenzy or fury, and who may be another aspect of Odin himself, disappears on long journeys, leaving Freya to weep tears of gold in his absence. Their daughters Nas and Gersemi inherit their mother's beauty so completely that their names become synonyms for treasure and precious things. But Freya's story extends far beyond her mysterious marriage. Her famous necklace Brisingamen, crafted by 4 dwarf brothers, costs her 4 nights of love, one with each craftsman. This transaction has been interpreted as everything from sacred prostitution to divine theft, but perhaps it simply represents the truth that the most beautiful things often require the most personal sacrifices. Let these images of divine love and longing drift through your peaceful mind. Freyr gazing across the cosmos with lovesick eyes, Freya weeping golden tears for her absent husband, the fertility twins whose very existence makes possible all the abundance and beauty in the 9 worlds. Their stories remind us that even gods must sacrifice for love, that even divine beings know the pain of longing and the cost of desire fulfilled. Feel your breath growing slower and deeper as you contemplate these Vanir deities, no longer strangers from a distant realm but integral members of the Aesir family, their fertility magic enriching the cosmic order, their complex relationships adding new branches to our ever-growing mythological tree. At the heart of Norse mythology's beautiful confusion lies a truth that sets it apart from most other mythological systems, the constant intermarriage between gods and giants, creating hybrid children who bridge the realms of order and chaos, wisdom and wildness, cosmic law and primal force. These unions are not aberrations but the very foundation of the Norse cosmos, proof that the most creative forces arise from the meeting of opposites. Let your mind drift to the cosmic diplomacy that unfolds when gods and giants choose alliance over enmity, partnership over eternal warfare. These strategic marriages and romantic entanglements create bloodlines that ensure neither side can ever fully triumph over the other, binding former enemies together with ties stronger than any peace treaty. Odin's pursuit of Gunnlod represents perhaps the most famous example of strategic seduction in all mythology. Deep within the mountain Nibjorg, the giant maiden guards the mead of poetry, that precious substance brewed from the blood of Kvasir, the wisest being ever created. To reach this treasure, Odin must employ all his skills of deception and desire, drilling through solid rock in the form of a serpent, then seducing Gunnlod during 3 nights of passion that purchased 3 draughts of the divine mead. Picture this scene unfolding in the heart of the mountain, the All-Father in his most charming aspect, the giant maiden torn between duty and desire, their union creating not just the theft of poetry but the birth of Bragi, god of eloquence. Their 3 nights together transform both participants, Odin gains the power of inspired speech that makes him king of gods in truth as well as name, while Gunnlod bears a child who will become one of the most beloved deities in Asgard. The relationship between Odin and Grid, the giant sorceress, demonstrates how these god-giant unions often provide crucial aid in times of need. When Thor must face the giant Geir without his hammer Mjolnir, it is Grid who lends him her own belt of strength, her iron gloves, and her staff Greidervolar. Yet Grid is more than just an ally, she is also Odin's lover and the mother of Vidar the Silent, the god whose thick boot will one day avenge his father's death by kicking open Fenrir's jaws. Feel the complexity of these relationships settling into your peaceful mind. Grid, the giant who aids the thunder god against her own kind, who loves the All-Father and bears him a son destined to survive the end of the world. Her story reminds us that in Norse mythology, tribal loyalty means less than personal choice, that giants can be more trustworthy than gods, that the lines between friend and enemy shift like aurora across the northern sky. Beyond strategic alliances lie the romantic entanglements that complicate our family tree through passion rather than politics, love rather than calculation. These relationships often begin in conflict and transform into something deeper, proving that the Norse cosmos thrives on the creative tension between opposing forces. Thor's relationship with Jarnsaxa, whose name means iron knife, creates one of the most intriguing romantic subplots in all mythology. Despite Thor's reputation as a giant slayer, his relationship with this fierce giantess produces Magni, whose strength surpasses even his father's. The surviving sources tell us little about how this relationship developed. Did it begin in battle and transform into love? Was Jarnsaxa captured or did she come willingly to Asgard? These mysteries add depth to Thor's character, suggesting depths of passion and complexity beneath his straightforward warrior exterior. Picture Magni, son of Thor and Jarnsaxa, inheriting his father's strength and his mother's fierce independence, growing up between two worlds, equally at home in Asgard's golden halls and Jotunheim's wild landscapes. His mixed heritage makes him a bridge between realms, and his destiny to inherit Mjolnir after Ragnarok suggests that the future belongs not to pure bloodlines but to hybrid vigor. The romance between Freyr and Gerd represents perhaps the most beautifully doomed love story in Norse mythology, a passion so intense that it costs the fertility god his most precious possession, his magical sword. From his unauthorized seat on Odin's throne Hlidskjalf, Freyr sees Gerd's beauty illuminating the giant realm like aurora dancing across winter skies. Her arms, raised to open her father's door, cast light across both sky and sea, filling the fertility god with such longing that he wastes away from lovesickness. The negotiation for Gerd's hand, conducted by Freyr's servant Skirnir, reveals the complexity of god-giant relationships. Skirnir must travel through the realm of frost and flame, past howling wolves and supernatural guardians, to reach Gerd's hall. His first offerings, 11 golden apples and Odin's golden ring Draupnir, she refuses. Only when he threatens her with a curse of eternal ugliness and isolation does she finally agree to meet Freyr at the sacred grove Bari. Their union, when it finally occurs after 9 nights of waiting, produces not just personal fulfillment but political consequence. Their son Fjalnir becomes the first king of Sweden, establishing a divine bloodline that connects the Vanir fertility gods to mortal rulers. Yet the cost of this love proves catastrophic for the cosmic order. Having given away his sword to win Gerd's heart, Freyr faces Ragnarok weaponless and falls to Surtur's flaming blade. Let this tragic beauty settle into your drowsing consciousness. The fertility god dying for love, the giant maiden whose beauty costs the world its protector, the passion that creates kings but destroys gods. In Norse mythology, love always carries a price, and the greatest loves exact the highest costs. The children born from god-giant unions represent some of the most fascinating figures in all mythology, beings whose mixed heritage grants them unique powers and perspectives, whose very existence proves that the creative force of the universe lies not in purity but in combination, not in separation but in synthesis. Heimdall the White God, guardian of the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, possesses perhaps the most mysterious parentage in all of Norse mythology. The Voluspa speaks of his birth from 9 mothers, all sisters, all giantesses, who bore him together in some cosmic birthing process that defies normal understanding. Some scholars interpret these 9 mothers as the 9 daughters of Aegir, the sea giant, making them waves of the ocean itself. Others suggest they represent 9 different aspects of the earth goddess, 9 mountains, 9 sacred groves. Picture this impossible birth, 9 giant maidens joining their power to create a single child, their combined essence flowing into Heimdall like 9 rivers joining to form a great waterway. His resulting nature reflects this 9-fold origin. He can see for hundreds of miles in any direction, hear grass growing and wool sprouting on sheep's backs, needs less sleep than a bird, possesses teeth of gold and owns a horse that can ride through air as easily as over land. Heimdall's role as guardian of Bifrost makes perfect symbolic sense for a child of multiple giant mothers. He literally bridges the realms, standing watch at the connection point between worlds, his mixed heritage allowing him to understand and protect all the peoples of the cosmic tree. His destined death at Ragnarok, locked in mutual destruction with Loki, represents the final collision between order and chaos, the guard and the gatecrasher destroying each other as the old world ends. Vidar the Silent, son of Odin and the giantess Grid, embodies another type of hybrid power, the combination of divine wisdom and giant endurance that will prove crucial for the post-Ragnarok world. His famous thick boot, crafted from all the leather scraps that cordwainers have thrown away, seems almost comically mundane until we understand its cosmic purpose. This boot will be strong enough to pry open Fenrir's jaws after the great wolf has swallowed Odin, allowing Vidar to thrust his sword into the beast's heart and avenge his father's death. Feel your breathing deepen as you contemplate Vidar's patient preparation for his moment of cosmic importance, a god who speaks little but acts decisively when the time comes, whose giant mother's gifts of strength and endurance combine with his divine father's wisdom and purpose to create the perfect avenger. His survival of Ragnarok, along with Vali, ensures that some remnant of the old divine wisdom will guide the construction of the new world. The pattern repeats throughout Norse mythology, god-giant hybrid children who possess unique combinations of power and perspective, beings whose mixed heritage grants them special roles in the cosmic drama. They serve as bridges between worlds, guardians of thresholds, survivors of catastrophes, reminders that the future belongs not to the pure but to the mixed, not to the separate but to the combined. Let these hybrid heroes drift through your peaceful mind as you sink deeper into rest. Heimdall with his 9 mothers watching over the Rainbow Bridge, Vidar with his thick boot preparing silently for his moment of vengeance, Magni with his strength surpassing Thor's inheriting the hammer that will protect the new world. Each one proof that in Norse mythology, the most powerful beings arise from the creative union of opposites, the fertile marriage of order and chaos, wisdom and wildness, divine purpose and giant passion. The complexity of Norse mythology extends its roots deep into the mortal world, creating bloodlines that blur the distinction between myth and history, between divine saga and royal genealogy. These human-divine connections transform kings into gods and gods into ancestors, weaving a tapestry of lineage that makes every royal house a chapter in cosmic history. Let your mind drift to the ancient halls of Denmark, where kings traced their lineage not to mortal ancestors but to Odin himself through his son Skjold, founder of the Silding dynasty. Picture the great mead halls where skalds would recite these genealogies, each name in the royal lineage carrying the weight of divine heritage, each generation both mortal rulers and descendants of the All-Father. Skjold, whose name means shield, appears in multiple sources as both mythological figure and historical ancestor. The Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf calls him Scyld Sifing, the shield child who arrives mysteriously as a baby in a boat filled with treasure, grows up to become a great king, and returns to the sea in a ship funeral when his time on earth ends. This story transforms a divine genealogy into a founding myth, making the entire Danish royal line descendants of a figure who bridges the gap between God and human, myth and history. The Silding kings who follow, Beowulf, Hilfdene, Hrothgar, rule not just through political power but through inherited divine charisma, their legitimacy flowing from their connection to Odin's bloodline. Their great halls echo with stories of their divine ancestry, their warriors fight with the knowledge that they serve descendants of gods, their enemies face not just mortal kings but representatives of cosmic authority. Feel your breathing slow as you contemplate these ancient halls, where the line between history and mythology blurs like mist across a morning lake. These kings are simultaneously historical figures and mythological characters, their stories preserved in both royal genealogies and divine sagas, their reigns marking moments where the divine world intersects directly with mortal politics. Even more elaborate than the Danish connection is the Swedish and Norwegian royal line known as the Inglings, whose genealogy traces back through Freyr to the very foundations of the Vanir pantheon. This dynasty creates perhaps the most complex intersection of divine and mortal bloodlines in all of Germanic mythology, where fertility gods become royal ancestors and kings become divine figures in their own right. The line begins with Freyr's union with the giant maiden Gerd, their son Fjalnar becoming the first king of Sweden. But Fjalnar's reign ends in a manner that perfectly captures the intersection of mythological symbolism and historical memory. He drowns in a vat of mead while visiting his friend the Danish king Frodi, his death simultaneously tragic accident and ritual sacrifice, mortal misfortune and cosmic necessity. From Fjalnar springs a long line of Yngling kings, each carrying decreasing amounts of divine blood but increasing amounts of historical detail. Svager, Fjalnar's son, goes on a quest to find the gods themselves, eventually disappearing into a sacred stone while pursuing a dwarf who promises to lead him to Odin. His son Vanlandi dies when Finnish witches use sorcery to crush him with a nightmare spirit. Visper is burned alive by his own sons in revenge for his abandonment of their mother. Picture these royal genealogies as they were recited in ancient halls, each name carrying its own story of divine heritage and mortal tragedy, each generation moving further from direct godhood but deeper into historical complexity. The pattern that emerges shows kings who are simultaneously blessed and cursed by their divine ancestry, rulers whose connection to the gods grants them legitimacy but also subjects them to cosmic forces beyond normal human control. The Yngling saga, as preserved by Snorri Sturluson, presents these kings as historical figures while never forgetting their mythological origins. King Agni wears a golden necklace taken from his wife Skjaf, who uses it to strangle him during a drunken feast. King Alrek and his brother Eric kill each other in single combat using horse bridles as weapons. King Ingvar dies of disease, but his body is preserved and worshipped as a fertility charm for years before his death is revealed. These stories operate simultaneously as history and myth, royal chronicle and divine saga. The Yngling kings are mortal rulers dealing with political challenges and personal conflicts, but they are also participants in cosmic patterns established by their divine ancestors, their individual stories reflecting eternal themes of power, sacrifice, renewal, and death. Beyond royal lineages lie the heroes whose divine ancestry grants them capabilities that transcend normal human limitations while still leaving them vulnerable to mortal weaknesses. These figures populate the great heroic cycles, the Volsunga saga, the stories of Helgi Hundingsbane, the tales of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, where divine blood creates both extraordinary power and inevitable tragedy. Sigurd Fafnir's Bane, greatest of Germanic heroes, traces his lineage back through the Volsung dynasty to Odin himself. The genealogy flows from the Allfather through his son Sigi, who becomes a king but dies through treachery, to Rerir, who prays to Odin for an heir, to Volsung, who builds his hall around a great oak tree that may be an emanation of Yggdrasil itself. The Volsung lineage embodies the pattern of divine blessing and cursed fate that characterizes all god-descended heroes. Volsung's son Sigmund pulls Odin's sword from the tree where the disguised god has thrust it, wielding this divine weapon until Odin himself breaks it in the battle where Sigmund dies. Sigurd, Sigmund's posthumous son, reforges the broken blade and uses it to slay the dragon Fafnir, winning a cursed treasure that will ultimately destroy him. Picture young Sigurd learning of his divine heritage from his foster father Regan, understanding that the same bloodline that grants him the strength to kill dragons also dooms him to die young, that his divine ancestry is simultaneously blessing and curse, gift and burden. His story unfolds as a meditation on the cost of divine blood in mortal veins, the price of inheriting powers that transcend human limitations. Helgi Hundingsbane represents another type of hero with divine ancestry, a warrior so magnificent that he is called Odin's grandson, though the exact genealogical connection remains mysterious. His story cycles through multiple incarnations. He dies and is reborn, loves and loses the same Valkyrie across different lifetimes, achieves glory that transcends individual mortality. The complexity of Helgi's relationship with Odin mirrors the complexity of all divine human connections in Norse mythology. Is he the god's literal descendant or spiritual successor? Does his divine ancestry grant him actual rebirth or merely ensure that his story will be retold across generations? These questions remain beautifully unanswered, reminders that the most profound relationships transcend simple categorization. Feel these heroic lineages settling into your peaceful consciousness like legendary songs echoing in ancient halls. Sigurd with his dragon-slaying sword inherited from divine ancestors, Helgi with his multiple lives and eternal love, the Yngling kings with their fatal combination of divine blessing and mortal vulnerability. Each story reminds us that divine blood in human veins creates beings capable of extraordinary deeds but incapable of ordinary happiness, heroes whose achievements transcend their lifespans but whose lives end in tragedy proportional to their glory. Let your breathing deepen as you contemplate these connections between mortal and divine, these bloodlines that transform historical figures into mythological characters and mythological figures into historical ancestors. In Norse mythology, every hero carries god blood, every king descends from divine lineage, every mortal story echoes cosmic themes, creating a world where the boundary between human and divine dissolves like morning mist touched by the first light of dawn. All family trees eventually face their season of ending, and the Norse mythological tree approaches its twilight in Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, the final battle that will consume the 9 worlds in fire and flood. Yet even in this cosmic ending, the complex family relationships we have traced continue to shape every conflict, every death, every act of destruction and renewal. Let your mind settle into the gathering darkness as we explore how the family bonds we have traced throughout our journey become the very instruments of cosmic destruction. In Ragnarok, the most intimate relationships become the deadliest conflicts. Fathers face sons across the battlefield, brothers in blood fulfill their destinies as enemies, and the love that once bound families together transforms into the hatred that tears them apart. Odin All-Father, whose wanderings across the 9 worlds created so many of the family connections in our tangled tree, meets his end in the jaws of Fenrir, Loki's wolf son, raised in Asgard as part of the divine family until fear and betrayal transformed love into vengeance. Picture this moment of cosmic justice, the king of gods, who helped bind the wolf in chains forged from deception, finally facing the creature whose trust he violated, whose loyalty he rejected out of fear for a prophesied future. The tragedy of Odin's death lies not just in the loss of the All-Father, but in its family dynamics. Fenrir was never evil, he was a wolf child raised among gods, fed by brave Tyr, growing large and strong in Asgard's halls until his size frightened even his adopted family. The gods' attempt to bind him required lies and betrayal, costing Tyr his sword hand and transforming a loyal family member into an enemy sworn to vengeance. Feel your breathing slow as you contemplate this pattern, fear creating the very disaster it seeks to prevent, family rejection breeding the vengeance it claims to forestall. Odin falls to Fenrir not because fate demands it, but because the god's treatment of the wolf made that fate inevitable, because fear of family created the family enemy who would fulfill the dreaded prophecy. Thor faces his own family doom in his destined battle with Jormungand, the world serpent who is also Loki's son. Here uncle and nephew meet in mutual destruction, the thunder god's hammer cracking the serpent's skull while its venom fills Thor's lungs. Their combat represents the collision of order and chaos, protection and destruction, the divine force that guards humanity meeting the primal force that threatens to swallow the world. Yet there is something almost beautiful in their mutual annihilation, Thor managing to take 9 steps after killing the serpent before falling dead from its poison, as if those 9 steps represent all the worlds he has protected, all the realms his sacrifice will save. His death preserves the future for his sons Mi and Magni, who will inherit Mjolnir and carry their father's protective role into the new world that follows Ragnarok's destruction. Heimdall and Loki themselves engage in the final family conflict, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge and the agent of chaos ending their long enmity in mutual slaughter. Their battle represents the ultimate collision between order and disorder, between the force that maintains boundaries and the force that destroys them, between the watchman who protects the gods and the blood brother who betrays them. Picture their final combat taking place at the very moment when the Rainbow Bridge burns, when the connections between worlds dissolve, when the cosmic order Heimdall has guarded collapses into the chaos Loki has unleashed. Their deaths mark not just personal endings but the end of the cosmic system itself, the final failure of the divine family to maintain its unity against the forces of dissolution. Freyr, the Vanir lord of fertility and abundance, faces Surtur the fire giant while weaponless, having traded away his magical sword to win Gerd's love. His death represents the cosmic cost of love, the price of choosing personal happiness over cosmic responsibility. Yet even his doom carries beauty, the fertility god dying for love, his sacrifice ensuring that his bloodline continues through his son Fjolnir, that his genetic legacy survives even as his personal presence ends. But Ragnarok is not merely an ending, it is also a beginning, a cosmic reset that preserves the most essential elements while clearing away the accumulated complications and corruptions. The survivors of the final battle represent carefully chosen continuations of the divine bloodlines, specific family connections preserved to seed the new world that will grow from the old world's ashes. Vidar the Silent and Vali the Avenger, both sons of Odin by different giant mothers, survived the destruction to become the foundation of the renewed Aesir. Vidar, son of Grid, uses his thick boot to kill Fenrir after the wolf has swallowed his father, fulfilling his role as cosmic avenger. Vali, born specifically to avenge Baldr's death, represents justice fulfilled and balance restored. Together, they embody the wisdom of the All-Father combined with the strength of their giant mothers, hybrid vigor preserved to guide the new cosmic order. Picture these two surviving gods standing in the ruins of Asgard after the fires have died, their mixed divine giant heritage making them uniquely suited to rebuild a world that will no longer maintain artificial barriers between different types of beings. Their survival suggests that the future belongs not to pure bloodlines but to hybrid strength, not to tribal separation but to family integration. Mi and Magni, Thor's sons by Sif and Jarnsaxa respectively, inherit their father's hammer Mjolnir and his role as protector of the new humanity. Their survival ensures that the thunder god's strength continues into the new world, but carried by two sons rather than one father, shared power rather than individual might, cooperative strength rather than solitary heroism. The most miraculous return is that of Baldur and Hr, the brother gods whose tragic conflict helped precipitate Ragnarok itself. Their emergence from Hell's realm represents the ultimate family reconciliation, the healing of the wound that began the gods' decline into suspicion and violence. Picture their reunion, Balder the beautiful and Hr the blind embracing after death has healed their fraternal tragedy, their restored love representing the emotional foundation of the new world. Feel this promise of renewal settling into your peaceful mind, brothers reconciled, family wounds healed, love restored after cosmic destruction. The return of Balder and Hr suggests that even the most devastating family conflicts can be resolved, that endings always contain the seeds of new beginnings, that love ultimately proves stronger than fear, trust more enduring than suspicion. The world that emerges from Ragnarok's destruction represents a simplified but purified version of the complex family relationships we have traced throughout our journey. The surviving gods create a new Asgard with fewer complications but deeper connections, relationships based on love and trust rather than politics and necessity. Lif and Lifthrasir, the two humans who survived the final conflagration by hiding in Yggdrasil's trunk, become the new Adam and Eve of this renewed world. Their names mean life and striving for life, suggesting that the human survivors represent not specific individuals but the life force itself, the determination to continue despite cosmic catastrophe. Picture these two emerging from the world tree's protection into a landscape swept clean of old complications, where the surviving gods and the renewed humanity can build relationships based on wisdom gained from the previous world's mistakes. The new world carries the memory of the old world's beauty while avoiding its fatal flaws, family bonds without jealousy, divine power without arrogance, order without oppression. The new cosmic order that emerges reduces the cast of characters but intensifies their relationships. With fewer gods surviving, each relationship becomes more precious. With fewer complications, each connection becomes clearer. With fewer conflicts, each bond becomes stronger. The tangled family tree of the previous world gives way to a simpler but more stable structure, relationships based on choice rather than circumstance, love rather than fear. Let this vision of renewal carry you toward peaceful sleep, the new world growing green and beautiful from the ashes of the old, relationships purified by suffering and loss, family bonds strengthened by having survived ultimate testing. The most confusing family tree ever imagined ends not in permanent destruction but in simplified renewal, not in final separation but in chosen reconnection, not in eternal conflict but in hard-won peace. Feel your breathing deepen as you contemplate this cosmic promise, that every ending contains a beginning, that every family conflict can ultimately be resolved, that every relationship can be renewed if both parties choose love over fear, trust over suspicion, hope over despair. The Norse family tree may be confusing in its complexity, but its ultimate message is beautifully simple: love endures, families survive, and new worlds grow from the roots of old relationships. As you drift deeper into peaceful rest, let us explore how storytellers and scholars have attempted to bring clarity to the beautiful chaos we have wandered through together. The Norse family tree's complexity has challenged every attempt to organize it, yet in these very attempts we find new ways to appreciate the intricate connections that bind all these divine relationships together. Picture ancient skalds sitting in firelit halls, faced with the challenge of helping their audiences understand the bewildering relationships between gods, giants, and heroes. These master storytellers developed techniques that we can imagine even now, strategies that transform confusion into comprehension without losing the essential mystery that makes these relationships so fascinating. The character spotlight technique allows us to focus on one figure at a time, creating circular narratives that explore all the relationships radiating from a single divine personality. Imagine a gentle voice telling you, "Tonight we follow Loki, Loki the shapeshifter, Loki the blood brother, Loki the father, Loki the mother." Born of giants Farbodi and Laufey, adopted as brother by Odin himself, husband to faithful Sigyn, father to monsters, mother to horses, friend to gods, enemy to order, bound beneath the earth until the world's ending. This approach creates manageable segments within the larger chaos, allowing each relationship to be explored fully before moving to the next connection. Feel your mind organizing these connections naturally, each relationship settling into place like pieces of an ancient puzzle, each bond between beings becoming clearer as it receives focused attention. Color coding provides another strategy for navigating the family tree's complexity. Picture the Aesir bathed in blue light, Odin with his blue cloak, Thor with his blue lightning, all the Asgard gods sharing this celestial hue. The Vanya glow green like growing grain, Njrr with sea green robes, Freyr and Freya with the green of fertile fields and spring forests. Giants burn red like fire and forge heat, their passion and power visible in crimson auras. Humans shine in warm brown tones like earth and wood, grounding and connecting all the other colors. When relationships cross color boundaries, imagine them creating new hues, god-giant marriages producing purple children, human-divine unions creating golden offspring, Vanir-Aesir connections glowing with blue-green light. These color blends help visualize the hybrid nature of so many Norse mythological figures, their mixed heritage visible in the very light that surrounds them. The rhythmic language of poetry provides perhaps the most soothing way to explore these complex relationships, transforming genealogy into lullaby, family history into gentle verse. Listen to the cadence: Odin, father of Thor, brother of Vili, husband of Frigg, lover of Jr, seeker of Gunlod, wanderer of worlds, all-father of Asgard, blood brother of Loki, ruler of ravens, master of wolves. This repetitive, incantatory style mirrors the original kenning-heavy poetry of the ancient skalds, where each figure accumulated descriptive phrases like layers of identity. The rhythm itself becomes hypnotic, carrying you deeper into rest while the relationships sort themselves naturally in your drowsing mind. Dreamlike transitions help smooth the movement between different family branches, creating a sense of floating through the cosmic tree rather than climbing methodically from branch to branch. As Ymir fell, his bones became mountains where giants would dwell, his blood became seas where Njrr would reign, his skull became the sky through which Odin's ravens fly. These flowing connections remind us that all relationships spring from common sources, all complications arise from shared origins. The technique of addressing contradictions directly transforms potential confusion into acceptable mystery. Some say Loki's mother was Laufey, others call her Nal, some claim Baldur will return after Ragnarok, others believe his death is final, some tell of Thor having two sons named Magni, others say there was only one. This approach acknowledges that mythology grows and changes like a living thing, that different communities preserve different versions, that uncertainty itself is part of the tradition's beauty. The scholarly approach to these contradictions reveals layers of meaning that enhance rather than diminish our appreciation of Norse mythology's complexity. Multiple versions of relationships and events reflect different communities, different time periods, different storytelling purposes, creating a rich tapestry of possibility rather than a single authoritative account. Folk interpretations often preserve emotional truths that formal mythologies might edit out. Where scholarly sources present Odin as a calculating king gathering wives for political advantage, folk stories might emphasize his genuine affection for each lover, his grief at necessary separations, his struggle to balance personal desires with cosmic responsibilities. These interpretations add psychological depth to divine relationships, making gods more relatable even as they remain mythological. Feel these different layers of meaning settling into your peaceful consciousness like sediment in still water, scholarly analysis providing structure, folk wisdom adding emotion, poetic tradition creating beauty, contradictory sources preserving options rather than demanding single answers. The confusion itself becomes comforting, a reminder that the most profound truths cannot be captured in simple formulations. As you rest in the deepest stages of relaxation, your mind gently holding all the complex relationships we have explored together, let us consider why this most confusing family tree continues to matter, why these ancient Scandinavian stories still speak to us across centuries of change and transformation. The beautiful confusion of Norse family relationships reflects profound truths about existence itself, patterns that remain relevant regardless of cultural change or historical distance. The cyclical nature of destruction and renewal, embodied in Ragnarok's promise that endings always become beginnings, mirrors patterns we see throughout our own lives, relationships that end only to be renewed in new forms, conflicts that destroy old structures only to enable better ones to grow. Picture the cosmic cycle spinning like a great wheel through time, creation arising from destruction, order emerging from chaos, family bonds dissolving only to reform in new configurations. Odin's sacrifice of his eye for wisdom, Thor's eventual death protecting the future, Baldr's murder leading to renewal, each individual tragedy contributes to cosmic regeneration, each personal ending enables collective beginning. The interdependence of order and chaos, embodied in the constant intermarriage between gods and giants, reflects the truth that creativity requires the meeting of opposites, that stability needs the challenge of change, that peace must occasionally face war to remember its own value. The Aesir alone would create sterile perfection, giants alone would produce destructive chaos. Together, they generate the dynamic tension that enables growth, change, and renewal. Feel this cosmic wisdom settling into your peaceful mind, the understanding that conflict and cooperation are both necessary, that endings and beginnings are phases of single processes, that the most creative forces arise from the marriage of opposites rather than the dominance of any single principle. These ancient relationship patterns continue to influence contemporary culture in ways both obvious and subtle, their psychological truth ensuring their survival across technological and social transformations. The influence on popular culture, from Marvel's interpretation of Thor and Loki as brothers to video games that explore Norse mythological relationships, demonstrates how these family dynamics continue to resonate with modern audiences. But the deeper relevance lies in the psychological archetypes these relationships represent. Odin as the wise but flawed father figure, simultaneously protective and manipulative, loving and calculating. Thor as the reliable protector whose straightforward nature sometimes blinds him to complexity. Loki as the shape-shifting trickster whose creativity and destruction spring from the same source, whose outsider status breeds both loyalty and betrayal. Freya represents the goddess who owns her sexuality and power, who weeps for lost love but never becomes passive victim. Frigg embodies the mother who knows terrible truths but bears them silently, who protects her children even when protection proves impossible. Balder personifies the beloved child whose very perfection makes him vulnerable, whose death teaches the cost of innocence in a complicated world. These archetypes appear in different forms across cultures and centuries, but the Norse versions carry particular psychological richness because of their moral ambiguity, their resistance to simple categorization, their acknowledgement that the same person can be simultaneously hero and villain, protector and threat, lover and enemy. Let these eternal patterns drift through your consciousness like familiar melodies heard in half-sleep, the wise father, the protective son, the faithful wife, the shape-shifting outsider, the beloved child, the grieving mother, the avenging brother, the patient guardian, the fertility goddess, the silent avenger. Each archetype carrying timeless truth, each relationship reflecting patterns that repeat across generations and cultures. As our journey through the most confusing family tree ever imagined draws toward its close, feel the tangled branches beginning to organize themselves in your peaceful mind. The confusion that seemed overwhelming at the beginning now reveals itself as a different kind of order, a complexity that reflects life's true nature rather than reducing it to false simplicities. The tree may be tangled, but its roots hold wisdom, the understanding that all beings are connected, that enemies can become family, that family can become enemies, that the most important relationships transcend simple categories like friend and foe, order and chaos, divine and mortal. These roots reach deep into the wells of memory and wisdom, drawing nourishment from eternal sources, growing stronger through the very complications that seem to threaten their stability. Picture yourself resting now against the trunk of Yggdrasil itself, the world tree whose branches support all 9 worlds, whose leaves whisper with the voices of all the characters we have met tonight. Odin and his many loves, Thor and his protective strength, Loki and his shape-shifting complications, the Vanir with their fertility magic, the giants with their primal power, the heroes with their divine heritage, all dwelling together in the great tree's embrace. The branches above you may be tangled, but they form a canopy that shelters all existence, a pattern too complex for simple understanding but perfect in its infinite connectivity. Each twist and turn of relationship, each impossible connection, each beautiful contradiction adds to the tree's strength, makes it more resilient, more capable of supporting the weight of all the stories, all the dreams, all the possibilities that nest in its eternal branches. Feel your breathing synchronized now with the great tree's gentle swaying, your heartbeat matching the cosmic rhythm that connects all beings across all worlds. The confusion has become comfort, the complexity has become completeness, the tangled relationships have become a web of connection that supports and sustains everything that exists. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself carried by gentle winds through the tree's branches, visiting each character in their eternal rest, Balder in his hall of peace, Thor in his protective strength, Freya in her golden tears, Odin with his ravens and his wisdom, Loki in his silver-tongued dreams. Each one greeting you with the familiarity of family, each relationship clear now in the soft light of understanding, each connection beautiful in its impossibility, perfect in its confusion. The most confusing family tree ever imagined has become the most comforting, its very complexity a promise that no one exists alone, that every being belongs to countless relationships, that the universe itself is nothing more and nothing less than an infinite web of connection, an eternal family tree whose branches reach into every dream, every hope, every peaceful moment of rest. Sleep now among the branches of Yggdrasil, cradled in the knowledge that confusion and clarity are 2 names for the same mystery, that endings are always beginnings, that families survive all transformations, and that the most beautiful truths are always too complex for simple words, too wonderful for easy understanding, too perfect for anything but dreams. Let the names flow through your dreams like gentle water. Odin, Frigg, Thor, Sif, Balder, Loki, Freya, Freyr, NJRR, each name a doorway into peace, each relationship a path to rest, each connection a bridge to deeper sleep. The world tree sways gently in cosmic winds, its roots drinking from wells of wisdom, its branches touching every world, its leaves whispering stories of love and loss, conflict and reconciliation, endings and beginnings, all part of the same eternal song, all notes in the same infinite melody. You rest now where all the characters meet, where all stories converge, where all relationships reveal their essential unity, where the most confusing family tree ever imagined becomes the most perfectly ordered dream, the most beautifully simple truth, the most peaceful understanding. Sleep, and dream of gods and giants, heroes and monsters, love and loss, all connected, all family, all one, in the eternal branches of the tree that holds all worlds, all stories, all dreams.